This episode of Verbal Tap brought to you by NogiBJJGear.com.
Use the promotional code VerbalTap15 to get 15% off of your order. Do it!
Is the moment UFC fans around the world have been waiting for. It's time!
As we speak, because there was a UFC event last night, 256, and if you're Ferguson, Jandiroba, Souza, or Dos Santos, you know, maybe you didn't lose. Maybe you're just 1 to 846 lawsuits away from getting that decision overturned. It's time for Verbal Tap. I'm your host, Kevin. With me, of course, Raph Esparza. Raph, how was that for my topical political up front?
Good.
Thank you. I was super bummed. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. And I have to tell you, we talked a little bit about this off air. Yesterday's card was really good, and it really put me in a good mood. And I have to say this because we shat on this card a little bit. Mm-hmm. So I'm not eating crow on this one because deep in my heart I still believed. However, there's a lot of positive energy here, Kevin.
Us and a global pandemic shat all over this fight. We also have returning from our lovely... well, my new favorite podcast, Southpaw Podcast. Sam, how are you, sir?
I'm doing all right. That was a stacked card. It ended up where a lot of the fights got canceled, but then it left just like the fights that ended up being really good.
It is nerve-wracking, Kevin, when the guest informs me moments after our episode is posted, by the way, which means we just recorded it. By the way, Angela Hill, no longer on the card. I said, damn it, of course.
We had to see that coming. Well, I know you were asking me who I had last minute, Tasha, Torres, or Sam Hughes.
Yes.
Sam, who did you go with? Or is this a name thing? You have to pick anyone named Sam.
No, I picked Tasha Torres.
Oh, you quitter. If that was Kevin Hughes, I would have picked her. Just saying.
Well, we should circle to results in a second here, or at least results from the card. We'll get to results of over-under, Kevin, a little bit later. Sam, there was something that was bugging me that I didn't ask you last week that I realized I should ask you this week in terms of how you produce a show. Mm-hmm. So, when you're producing the show, how much work goes into what you do? Now, I ask you this with full self-disclosure here. Kevin and I spend exactly an hour on the show a week.
And that's with my fancy editing skills.
Yes. So, Sam, how long are you looking at when you put together an episode that I'm sure includes research on a given topic, as well as sometimes grabbing a guest?
Oh, man. So let's say I do a 2-hour interview. That probably took 10 hours to produce. Maybe even longer if I had to read a book.
No. Whoa, shit. You have to read books for your podcast? Oh, Raph. Yeah. Hard veto for me. That's a hard pass.
And then Kevin and I have sometimes elected to just not do a podcast if it went too long. And we say, you know what? We'll take this week off.
We just watched Sylvester Stallone movies when everything was on hiatus. That's how much work we put in.
I remember thinking to myself, like, when we were doing this and you were reading the intro, you know, as we were doing this, and then reading the plugs as we were doing this, I was like, did they just like kind of upload this as it went? They don't do any like editing or a lot of construction or producing. It just is what it is.
The lights on, baby. And speaking of, this Christmas, wrap your package the way you would want to be wrapped with Manscaped. I have to tell you, my wife came home with these little mini beer cans, and I'm feeling like maybe Manscaped was too much because I feel like I deserve a big beer can for what I'm bringing to the Manscaped table. Enter in Verbal Tap 15. You're going to want to put the ball deodorant on. It's going to change your life. Rap, speaking of...
use the promotional code VerbalTap for 20% off of whatever you put in the cart. God damn it, Kevin. I don't know sometimes where you're going with this.
I don't either. But mostly I'm just really upset about these tiny beer cans. It's a 24 pack. I had to crack like 3 at a time. If you want to help out and look good, Sam, what's your are you a no gi or a gi guy?
I gi now. I used to be mostly strictly no gi, and then as I've gotten older, only doing the gi now.
And when you're no gi, are you spats? Are you wearing spats? You doing like what's your no gi look?
Yeah, like shorts, and then underneath the shorts, I'll wear like long leggings or something.
Same. You can look your best. You can look as good as Sam sounds on the radio by going to nogibjjgear.com. Spats up. Black is slimming. We've all been putting on some pounds. It's Christmas. Enter in VerbalTap 15. 15 being the ideal poundage we will all have to lose, but that's the spring's problem. And then we can go to brighter colors. Raph, that's all for the plugs. I just wanted to...
Good work. Let me return back to Sam's original prompt, which is there's an industry term that a lot of late night shows use, and it's called live to tape. And the idea is when they say live from New York, a lot of the times you tend to be watching something that was taped live. But
should we explain what taped is for people under 30?
Sure, Kevin.
Give a quick, how do you do this? 2 little circles with what look like black electrical tape used to imprint sound and images. There you go.
There we go. So it's something that we have inherited from late night, which is probably the closest genre to what Kevin and I do in terms of our contribution to MMA and jiu-jitsu. So yeah, you are correct. When we do it, it's a one-take thing. And there's a lot of good that comes from that. However, if you go through our archives, there are some moments that Kevin and I go, that just happened. So, all right, there it goes. I have to ask, if people are very interested to hear maybe a couple episodes, can you give us an example of something that is taking that 10 hours of your time?
We just did a recent one about the history of anarchism. So that was like 2 episodes, both about an hour and a half each, and had to do a lot of prep. Like kind of having to inform myself what questions I need to ask to try to get the best information out. So it's a interview, but it's also almost like a lecture. So I even work with the guest in trying to figure out what are their strengths, what are the areas they know the best, and how should we construct this so it's like kind of a logical timeline as they're listening, how we go from one topic to another, and how it can seemingly flow smoothly and where people can learn, like where whatever we just talked about builds onto the next idea, so it's easier for people to learn. So that took a long time. And then even like when we do just fight studies, where we break down fights, like recent UFC cards, like we're going to do one on the UFC 256. It'll be me and Paul creating the script, breaking it down, analyzing it. But lately it's been just Paul doing it, and then I'll read through it, and I'll make any corrections, like I'll fact check some of the stuff that he's analyzing to make sure that the stats are correct, and also just edit for we have actually, believe it or not, we have a writer's guide that we follow for Southpaw to make sure our quality is always up to snuff. So always like editing it just to make sure it follows our guidelines, and then he records it, and then I edit it, produce it, master it. So all the voices are like always the same level, and then we post it. And so it takes me a long time. Well, but was something I was talking to you, Raph, off the air, was just that how impressed at the sponsors you have, because when I think of Manscaped, I think of Ariel Helwani. So I was like, we're not even at that status, That's like,
that got weird for a second. Didn't know that would be your first association of like, when I think of Manscaped, I think of that Ariel Helwani.
Yeah, because the only 2 podcasts I know of that have Manscaped is you all and Ariel Helwani. So that's like, that's the big times right there.
When I think Manscaped, I
got VerbalTap.
For a long time.
I think the Christmas tree I shaved into myself, and I think VerbalTap 15. Go to manscaped.com, enter in the discount code.
Yeah, don't use Ariel's code. Use the VerbalTap code.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That other code.
He gets paid
Kev,
enough. Go ahead.
Yeah,
you
he's
give
got
him a
that ESPN
contrast?
money.
Kev, can you give him a contrast to the amount of preparation that both you and or I do on this show?
Well, I think I told you about the beers, right? I had the whole thing where I had to yell about the size of the beers. That took, 10, 12 minutes, I'd say, before she walked upstairs. And then, I had to go look at the highlights of the fights. I watched the undercard, and I have to tell you all, I'm worried about Cub Swanson. Cub Swanson might secretly be a zombie. I'm not sure that was a human being fighting. I'm definitely worried about the state of the UFC when I watched, the story of this card was what this card was originally, and I'll tell you, that's one stacked fight card.
Yeah.
All the stuff that got cut from this. But that was, 27 minutes, give or take. I also had to soberly look Sam's podcast back up, but now I'm staring right at it, including episode 85, Into the Weeds of Anarchism, Marxism, and Identity Politics, Part 1.
Well, Sam, I'm glad that you do that. And I think that people should know that they can go support you on Patreon, because if you're putting in that much work and I'm preparing to do something that is a special episode of the spinoff Grappling Hour, man, I feel your pain.
Well,
and I understand where you're coming from.
I'll give you a little bit more credit, though, Raph. You're kind of like MMA. You're ubiquitous, so you're just always absorbing. That's really helpful. So I can just dodge and weave.
So together we form a little bit of a mini Voltron that doesn't really come to the fight on time.
I do
That's
have one
kind
more.
of our game.
I have one more anarchism question, Sam. What kind of prep are you doing for that? Like, you're that makes more sense when you're saying you have to read books and start to understand something. And just watching the Belushi doc, he was talking about being an anarchist. He'd rather be an anarchist than a professional. I was having that moment where anyway. What do you do prep-wise for anarchy?
What do you mean?
Like
For that episode,
research?
or
Yeah, how much research?
For that one, I didn't end up reading any books. It was more like getting familiarizing myself with the guest's work, which is a lot of she's written a lot of essays and long articles online, a lot about theory, political theory. So I had to freshen up on that. And then she has her own YouTube channel where she posts a lot of educational stuff. So I had to bone up on that as well.
I don't like the way you're fact-checking yourself. If I read more than the headline, it counts as a book I read this year. So if I get 250 words in, you're welcome. Add it to the bio. Okay, that's interesting then. So Zoe Baker, who's the guest on that show, it's kind of, all right, I'm following.
Yeah,
Kev,
yeah.
I also
It's not
wanted
that
to ask-
weird, though, I was going to say.
What's not that weird?
Well, because if you think about, you two do comedy and MMA, and it's conversational, so it makes sense. But I would say you look at something like the videos Jack Slack makes, or BJJ Scout, or people like that. That even a 5-minute video, I know it takes them hours and hours to make, right? So it started out us talking about MMA and doing it like they did, putting a lot of effort into it, and then just carried over to the interviews as well. So I know for sure, and they've mentioned it, that BJJ Scout, Jack Slack, and all the other modern martial artists. Actually, I know him in real life, and if it's a 10-minute video, he tells me it takes him 20 hours to make it.
Okay.
Yes, we are similar in that regard. Absolutely. We like being grouped together with the cool kids at the table. It's fine. What I would say, though, Sam, is the other question I had, and again, to people who are listening here, I understand you want to get to the fight results. Shut up. We will. But the one thing that has really been peeking its head out, especially in our sport at this given time, is the concept of sports washing. Now, every time I see Khabib, there is a conflict for me, because we look at the athleticism and we say, wow, that is impressive. And sometimes it is hard to look at what's happening outside of that. When you and Pops are getting together with Putin, just having tea, no big, and then giving the nice little family matters moment of, you listen to your papa, And everybody goes, nah, that's so cute. Yay. For me, these things sometimes get a little subjugated under the element of, hey, guys, it's just MMA. But just this week, there seemed to be an element where sanctions were put against, I don't know, some weird country. And yet, it doesn't seem to create a blip on the radar of most MMA fans. So where do you fall in the element of sports washing in our sport? And I guess, how do you handle it?
How do I handle watching, like, how do I separate watching it from the political aspect of it?
Yeah.
Well, it's not that hard. The path has already been paved by pro wrestlers, or I should say pro wrestling fans, right?
Okay.
Like, Kane is an incredible performer, right? Especially in peak Kane days when he was like not only a giant man, but jumping off the top ropes, doing all those. He was like a very athletic big man, right? Now, Kane under the mask, the person is a libertarian mayor, right? And
Sure.
it's like, but Kane, the performer, is not Glenn Jacobs, the mayor. You know what I mean? It's like you could separate their performance in the ring and what they do in the ring from who they are outside. Like, The Undertaker is Blue Lives Matter, but in WrestleMania, he's the dead man, right? So for me,
I
mean,
God,
this is-
you two lost me minutes ago, but I'm sticking around. It's a good mental exercise to try and keep up.
yeah, I mean, this isn't even like me coming up with this. This has been like addressed in, pro wrestling, like newsletters to like podcasts to YouTube channels a bunch of times, dealing with like the politics outside of wrestling, like some of the bad politics some of the wrestlers have. And you just like can appreciate the art form and then think of it as something different from who they are in real life. Like, I was explaining this in another interview that people do this association where it's like MMA and UFC is one for one the same thing, and it's not. MMA and UFC is two different things, right? But it just happens that because the UFC is so big and ubiquitous, we always make that association. So the same thing with the fighters. It's like when they're in the ring and they're throwing a punch, that punch, the way they threw it, whether it was like a jab or a hook, that move, those decisions they made and how they ended up winning or losing is, I guess, the only way I can really explain it is like when you're rolling, right? You can't think about anything else other than the roll. Like, you don't even know if it's almost like an out of body experience, especially when it's intense, right? You're like, you don't know if you're a man or a woman. You don't know where you end and the other person begins. It's just like so basic. You're just like, I'm gonna grab their wrist and I'm gonna shimmy my hips over here, and it's just like you can't think about too many other things, right? You're just thinking about what's at hand. And I think of MMA in that way too, where it's like a series of decisions these fighters have to make. And I watch it just by enjoying the freedom and the decisions that they're making in the ring. I think because I approach it from just such an analytical perspective, right? Breaking down the moves that they're doing, it makes it easier. Whereas I think maybe for you two, because you're talking about the comedy and you're talking about the characters and the things they do, and you're making light of their foibles, then you have to put your microscope on their foibles. Whereas for me, I can just that isn't my like wheelhouse, right? My wheelhouse
That's
is
my new
more
band name.
More at the moves.
Microscope on Your Foibles is a band name. I gotta find that website domain. I'll be right back, guys.
Kev, just making sure I'm writing this down right. Our job is harder. Got it. Okay. Did not know that was the case. But I just, it is something that I sometimes have to look at when I'm approaching the comedy, when I'm, say, making a meme, where I go, am I normalizing part of this? Because I know that most other memers don't think of that. And they're welcome not to. I think that if that is not within their realm, they should just be trying to make you laugh. But every once in a while, I look around and I say, this guy's too stupid to celebrate. This is not a joke I really feel like making. Just in the terms of looking and knowing that sometimes these are conflicting ideas. What I would say, though, is that if y'all want a good exercise in finding where you stand this week, go see what Kamaru Usman has been up to, I guess, in the past 2 weeks, at least on most MMA news cycles. And especially when we see that there is one particular, I mean, Bloody Elbow as in general has become a huge target for people to say, like, just stick to MMA. And I go, well, that's a very interesting thing. I guess it just depends on which MMA outside coverage we're getting on politics, but okay. However, one thing I think all of us can agree on is Tito Ortiz as a councilman is going to provide us nothing but bloopers. And for that, we're thankful. Kev, let's get straight over to the card.
Fine.
I'm going to start off with this. Kev, you were telling us 10 minutes ago you lost interest in what we were talking about, and now you're like, well, yeah, we'll come back to it.
No.
But I do want to start with this. Sam, how good, in your opinion, was that main event?
Oh, man. I would say it's the best, maybe top 3, and then after that, you might have to think about it more if it deserves to be number 1, but just off the top of your head, top 3, like, flyweight fights of all time.
Oh, shit. So you enjoyed the card tremendously as well, because that's high praise.
Yeah, I mean, I missed, I think, the first couple of fights, but then started watching from the Fiziev fight and on, and it was like everything was a banger.
So, Kev, just to put this in some context for you, we started the night with friend of the show, I guess we can say. I mean, he's a follower of what we do. Chase Hooper did come away with a heel hook submission.
I saw that. The kiddo. The young man.
Not only did he come away with the submission, but he was hobbling on one foot for a bulk of the fight, and you could tell it was really affecting his performance. So in the third round, when he's down on the cards, you kind of think to yourself, what are you going to do? Oh, I don't know. Pull some heel hook shit. And where did he get it from? He credited it to Ryan Hall. He said, man, I really wanted to work with him, and I have to really give him the props for that. And he set it up with a nice feint and then went straight into an Eminari, and wouldn't you know it, the kid comes away with the heel hook as a result of it.
He also
the
did
setup
that
was great,
thing
and he did a great job.
I always want to do when someone's trying to heel hook me, and he punched him right in the face. That's always like my go-to defense. Like, I really wish I could punch you. All right, I'll tap instead. But I do like Chase gave him just a backhand right to the nose.
Can we talk about Ryan Hall for a second? I feel bad for the guy in that he fights. I think if you look up all his fights for the UFC, it's like he fights once every 2 years. So he fights once every 2 years, like this mythical creature that comes in. And there's all these other fighters who've already had 5 fights, but they're like always inspired by Ryan Hall's leg locks. So his presence of like people doing his setups are greater than the number of fights he's had.
It's really disappointing, Kev. Just so you know, the meme community puts out a daily meme that equates, sometimes false, but, at least comedically, how bad things are for Ryan Hall. For example, I think that one of them took a popular X-Men meme where Jean Grey and Cyclops are making out and Wolverine's super pissed, and it was Dana White falling back in love with the featherweight division making out while he, Wolverine, was Ryan Hall. And it's funny.
Northern Virginia's finest, by the way. In my early days of grappling, this is just a fun throwback, Sam. I lived out just outside of D.C., and Ryan Hall would just show up at tournaments, obviously, because it was a different era, and frequently do like small super fights and things. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
Tiny man, imposing.
So, Kev, just to give you some further context here as well, Dana White went on the record saying in the post-presser, yeah, that was the best featherweight fight of all time. No doubt.
So good they couldn't declare a winner? What the shit?
Well, let's explain some context to that as well.
It's ridiculous.
Turns out, Kev,
you could argue nothing happened. You could argue 0 things that happened. Just
you are speaking from a position of not knowing, and I must educate you because it was so good. And here's why. If there wasn't a punch to the dick, things might have been really what it came down to. I don't know any other way to put it to you.
Yeah. If it wasn't for that -1, Davison would have won on all 3 cards, all
Correct.
3 judges' cards.
But would you have been surprised by some of those scorecards? Did you have it scored that exact same way, Sam?
Yeah, I had Davison winning. And then I thought because of the minus, maybe it was going to be a draw. So I was expecting a draw, actually.
Yeah, there was a moment during the fight companion I did yesterday where I just kind of said, yeah, I think this is going to a draw. And I know sometimes when we preface that, it's a little bit of an unpopular thing to say to people because people love to see them some winners and losers on all fights, and understandably so. But Kev, you argue nothing could have theoretically happened there. There was a lot of shit that happened. For example, Figgy Smalls, 100% kept his hands down throughout the bulk of the fight. And yet it seemed to mostly work. The only thing that happened is he had a game opponent and Brandon Moreno who basically said, oh, if you keep your hands down long enough, you're going to let me back into this fight more often than I should be. Mm-hmm. So there was a lot of heart on display. There's also talk that they immediately want to go this into a rematch scenario, and I have no problem with that. If you are coaching him, Sam, what are the adjustments that you would suggest to Brandon Moreno?
I think a lot of those body kicks were, you saw that, right? Like they seem to be working well. A lot of the combinations, especially as counters. So after Davison throws, Moreno waits and then throws right after. He did really well. And also the grappling exchanges. It seemed like the grappling exchanges is what really made it close. As soon as it, not even like hit the ground, as soon as they clinched up, Moreno, I wouldn't say he's like way better than him, but good enough to control him on the ground. So I think there was a lot of positives that he could just build off of. But I don't know if they could run it back that fast because remember that arm?
Yeah.
That added to the drama of the fight because he was like fighting the last round where it looked like his arm was either broken or just something was wrong with it. He couldn't throw it.
On the commentary deck, they were suggesting the idea that maybe a kick ruined the elbow, but it was later revealed in his post-fight interview that Brendan had actually, in true smiling Brendan form, was like, oh, no, my shoulder just sucked. It's fine. And you go, oh, so it wasn't the elbow. It was your shoulder that popped out. Good. Cool to know. Meanwhile, Kevin, it was also revealed that Davison was apparently in the hospital until 2 a.m. on Saturday. He had some sort of stomach virus of some sort. Like he said he wasn't feeling well, but still managed to show up.
That Vegas buffet, I've been there. You think I'll go to the nicest one. I'll just get a little salad an hour later. I have one question, and it has nothing to do with the fights outside of, I didn't realize the dick punch would be so important to this conversation. This is Mighty Mouse's division, right?
Yeah.
This is what he used to fight at? Okay. Why the hell was he like cut from the UFC? Where isn't this the exact moment we were waiting for? Someone like D-Figs, the D puncher. Was it bad? Like how many times did he hit him in the nuts?
I mean, it was a significant one. You know, it's that kind of hit where, and I want to bring this to everybody's attention just because we had to meme it because it was so perfect. But yes, I will take the third opportunity on air to share this joke. It does appear, Kevin, that the UFC is now sponsored by Trojan condoms. Take that, Condom Depot. And the tagline here says, protect yourself at all times. Trojan condoms. And it's a poster for UFC 256. And our joke was, so effective, she'll want to take the full 5. Now, we're 100% in the right in this because fuck them. But also, disrespect to Condom Depot. And we will not stand for that here.
There's also a rumor Moreno manscaped an arrow at his junk, so maybe.
So here's what you should know. We're in a seriously weird place here with the UFC, which is apparently this is the best year for the UFC ever. Even though a lot of bad shit happened, they're doing financially great, which is why, Kevin, we have to cut 60 fighters.
I was just going to say, they're doing so great. They just cleaned the house. Absolutely. They're doing great. And they Did they mention the lawsuit at all on air?
Nope. In fact, earlier, I think this week during a media scrum, Dana White gave the most mafioso response, which is, I don't know anything about that. I don't know anything.
Yes, yeah, oh, that's awesome.
So I wanted to be like, Dana, I'm pretty sure you know a little bit about it. In
Yeah.
fact, one might argue a lot that you don't want to talk to us about.
You're
That's
in the
fine.
deposition. That's hilarious. I love that. I don't know anything about that. It's such a good Dana-ism, but that to me is why they're doing okay. They're having events every 7 minutes, whether they're good or not. They're just charging people for them.
Yeah.
And they're one of the only sports that's like pretty consistent. I do not think this is good. I still think this is all fool's gold. I think the UFC will come to a crashing reality in 2021.
It's very possible. And there is some argumentation that says, okay, let's see this out. Yeah, the UFC is getting rid of fighters who maybe cost them more money, aka your Mighty Mouse. So why doesn't he go somewhere else and make money? And Mighty Mouse is a-okay making good money with ONE FC. So he said
In
he wants to
Asia, he's
retire
a
them.
giant.
Let's calm that one down.
He loves
But I
ONE
would say-
FC. He's like, here I am. I'm never leaving.
However, having said that, there is a theory that, yeah, Dana White is going to be fine in terms of having a roster because they're going to get all this cheap talent from Dana White's Contender Series. So I guess the question is, Sam, when you see stuff like that, have you addressed the pay scale yet on your podcast? Because I would love a 12-hour exploration of it.
I mean, I think we bring it up like all the time whenever we do a fight study. So yeah, it gets brought up a lot. But I think I might have been the first one to start saying that was what was going to happen on Twitter, right? I was saying he was going to replace the expensive fighters with fighters from the Dana White puppy mill. So
You call it the fighter mill. It's really
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, a lot
at
of
the
people
very
actually
end, you
even
don't
from
say
Bloody
that
Elbow.
you signed a fighter, you say you rescued a fighter.
It is well, okay. Why did you called that early, but you enjoyed these fights? So that's good though,
Yeah.
right? Like how I want to circle back to these.
Thank you.
Mackenzie Dern, but before we get to Mackenzie Dern, and I read actually speaking of research, I read an article about how having a child has made her a better fighter, and it spoke to me. Ferguson gets his arm just jailed right off. No tappies.
Sam.
Yeah. Have you seen that meme where it's like the guy on his first day doesn't know about tapping? Nobody told him about tapping.
I have not, but I can see that. My mind immediately was like, Tony Ferguson is us, and the Cowboy Oliveira is 2020. This is fun. Just watching it brutally. And it was the most shareable moment of the fight, is the picture of Oliveira with just a textbook deep armbar.
Well, Sam, you're the highest ranking person on this podcast right now. Can you walk us through why maybe Tony did not tap to that?
Have any of you like really had your arm hyperextended?
Yes.
So
Yes.
like especially if you compete, I think sometimes adrenaline and whatever, you just kind of like you're debating it, right? And if they're really going at it, there's a point where it really hurts, and then when it goes like too far, it doesn't. You don't even feel anything anymore. And you saw Tony's hand. Like there's images where Tony's hand is right there, ready to tap. And I think that was at that pain point where it's like it hurts a lot. And then after a while, and then he waited. He's like, I don't know. I mean, he was like convincing himself, like, should I tap or not? And then it went too far. And it's like, I don't even feel the arm anymore. You know, fuck it. Let's just do it.
Have you
And it also,
Have you ever taken it
Go
that
ahead.
far? I've never taken it that far. I got popped by a Yamasaki blue belt half my size in an absolute. I was just like, what happened? What's happening? And it hurt.
Yeah.
But it wasn't anything like that.
I've had it popped in a tournament where I actually started tapping very quickly when it went to the point where I couldn't even feel it. Then I was like, oh my God, I don't feel my arm. This isn't good, right? So
Ooh, okay.
yeah.
Yeah, I would say this. I think he might have heard the clacks, so he might have known he was within the realm of 10 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
And he maybe
It's a long
just
10
figured,
seconds.
it's a rough one, Kevin. And I think he was gritting it. And as Sam may have mentioned here, yeah, at a certain point, you just kind of say, well, my life sucks, so I guess I might as well just ride this one out. And to his credit, he made it all the way through the fight, Kev.
Well, tough. I saw the decision, which was hard to reconcile given what I had seen armbar-wise. But it's also Tony Ferguson. I mean, it's not wildly surprising. He's like, if it breaks, it breaks. Mackenzie Dern. Oh, go ahead.
There is the popular meme that says, Tony Ferguson is the kind of guy that keeps himself in an armbar. So I wanted to conclude on that one. Go ahead.
Let me ask you two a question. If you were in Tony Ferguson's corner and you saw that at that moment, would you throw in the towel? Or would you let Tony decide what he wants to do?
Oh, I'm not throwing in the towel. No, I'm letting Tony. I mean, this isn't to get right back on the Rocky IV references. This isn't that type of situation. The arm heals. Like, he knows what he's doing in there. I wouldn't, because for example, if I was cornering you, Sam, and I'm cornering, like, let's just say we meet at a tournament, you're like, hey, I got nobody else here, and you're not tapping, I'm probably looking away, but I'm not stopping the fight. I'm probably like, all right, man, because I do get squeamish when it's so clearly deep. These are like my struggles with tone in fights.
Kev, I was literally just joking with a kid who was competing, who I recently coached, and he got put in a body triangle in overtime, and I was trying to yell out for him to do certain things, and they just weren't taking, and I knew, oh, well, he's just got to eat it. This sucks. And afterwards, I told him, I go, you won, so things ended well. But there was a moment where I looked at you and I just said, listen, dude, I know you just aren't going to be able to implement some of the things I've yelled 2-3 times now. So looking at that face that just said, Raph, please help. And I go, I'll see you at the end of the 2 minutes. Just keep your neck safe. At the end, he was able to have a good laugh about it. But I told him, I go, man, it just sucks sometimes that you see your fighter. I would caveat it with this. I think Kev was leading down a road that I would say in my response, which is, for most people, let's say I am coaching you, Sam, I might throw in the towel because I know you and I would feel very, very bad. Tony is a different human being. And I want to walk you through the possibility of you throwing in the towel. And then as they announce, like, Charles Oliveira has won the fight, Tony Ferguson is now starting to fight you in the background and just chasing you. So I really want to make sure that people understand there is a heavy consequence to possibly maybe Tony losing that fight, but quickly try to get a win over you in that cage and saying, hey, I didn't win in there, but I'm going to leave this octagon with at least one W. And just to kind of crystallize this once and for all, there were some meme pages that said, you know what, this was the final nail in the coffin for the Tony Ferguson versus Khabib Nurmagomedov memes and hopes and aspirations. And all I could think of was, you guys are still on that? I thought we buried that shit months ago. I was done so long ago. And it is so surprising that people go, well, now we'll never see it. I was like, we weren't going to see it months ago.
What do you mean now? This is...
What the fuck do you mean now? Charles Oliveira was the one to kill it. No, it's been killed. And you know what? I even told somebody yesterday, I said, let me just put this crystal clear to you. They asked me for a fight prediction. And I said, listen, I have no good reason to tell you to put money on Tony Ferguson. However, I am merely going on Tony Ferguson math, which is he should not win this, so maybe there's an element he might win. That same person texted me back and said, he might win, huh? And I go, what do you want me to do, dude? We're damned if we do, and we're damned if we don't. The fight gods are not happy with Tony Ferguson for whatever reason, but I told you, why would you bet on this fucking fight? You're stupid to put money on this one fight.
Yeah.
And that's it.
I would say you should never bet on a Tony fight ever again, just because he's on such a decline, but also he's Tony Ferguson. So even if you bet against him, he might end up winning anyway somehow. So it's just not a good bet.
Well,
Yeah, I
Sam,
mean, I try to
you
tell
should
people,
have
don't bet on
this one. Just as a heads up.
I try to tell people, don't bet on fighters that you know will only break your heart. So just as a general rule here, fam. Now, Kev, you asked about Mackenzie Dern.
I
And I have some
remember I
good
had
news for
early money on one of those Khabib fights with Ferguson. Anyway, yeah, Mackenzie Dern.
Mackenzie Dern, good news, bad news, Kev. Good news, her striking has improved.
It's great. I don't care.
Bad
That's
news.
not what I want. I don't care if she throws one punch. I just want to see her heel hook someone. Choke her out.
Well, it's hard
Jandaroba's
when
tough, though. Like, she's a black belt.
Jandaroba also was putting it back on her quite in a good way. She also kneed the fuck out of Mackenzie Dern's nose. To Mackenzie Dern's coach's credit, when Mackenzie goes, "Hey, is my nose broken?" and the coach just goes, "I don't think so." And Mackenzie said in her post-fight interview, "Yeah, I was pretty sure once he said that it was broken."
I don't think so. It's not the best. We would all see right through that bullshit. If that was our corner, we'd all be like, "Uh oh, that's not good." It's like
That
how
would
does
be
it look?
akin to
It's like,
Kevin. That would be akin to Kevin asking me and be like, "Raph, do I still have my good looks?" And be like, yeah,
yeah,
Kev,
yeah, of course
you're
you
gonna
do.
be okay. No Christmas cards with your face on it this year. Just the animals this year. Sam, we're gonna go to you on this.
Okay.
I obviously have my feelings about the stand-up. I'll get to them. But what make you of Mackenzie Dern's performance in this fight?
I was actually impressed by one aspect, which was her heart and her cardio. I think in some of her earlier fights, especially when she was having problems with weight cutting, her cardio didn't look that good. But in this one, she didn't fade, and not only that, she was able. I mean, it was like 1-1 going into the last round, and she poured it on. So, she showed a lot of like willingness to just dig deep, because I think she realized, you know what, like our striking level is about the same. Then it's just gonna be about like whoever has more volume is gonna win, and so she put on a pace.
She did, Kevin. And here's where I'm concerned. Mackenzie dug deep, knew she needed to win the third round, did. Even with the broken nose and all, super impressed. What I would like to say is that it would make me feel, the jiu-jitsu fighter inside of me, so much better if maybe after every time she throws a combination, she doesn't duck her head down and press forward, because that is how the knee happened to her nose, and it made me very nervous throughout the duration of the fight. You can literally look at any combination she threw, and it's kind of like somebody charging ahead and just saying, well, to fuck it. My face doesn't need any sort of protection here. And I, one, admired it, and two, thought, please don't lose the fight because of this. And I have to say, I think that's where she got tagged a little bit.
And so the nose was early then.
Yeah, it was, I think,
so,
second
okay.
round or
That
somewhere.
helps. It's
Beginning of round 2.
Was there any
Thank
grappling?
you.
No, very little.
Not really.
Bummer.
No.
Massive
They both
bummer.
wanted to.
I feel like there
They
should
both
be
went
an
to say
agreement. First of all, both fighters have a Brazilian flag next to their name, including Mackenzie Dern on
Yes.
ESPN. But there should be an agreement. If you're both really into jiu-jitsu, can we just start the second round on our butt? Just like for fun?
It will be a double guard pull that I think would be pretty epic. And just to let you know, Kevin, her ESPN page, I don't know that you reported this correctly. It's the first time that ESPN has put up the Brazilian flag with a question mark next to it.
I don't see that, but I guess it's on here.
Let's talk about the sadness that is Jacare losing, Kevin, because
finish, because I'm ready to get to some results.
I know, man, and I'll bulletproof through some of these.
Sam's
but
got to go on vacation to unknown locations.
I know. Jacare, Kev, imagine he was winning the grappling exchange and trying to pass, and then while on his knees trying to pass, Kevin Holland just kind of technically stood up, and then while Jacare was still on his knees, kind of clocked him in the face with a kick first, then gets to his full standing upright position, and it just kind of beats him up in a way that you would see almost in a comic book where the villain stands over the hero, and then you think, oh, the hero's going to get up, and no, Superman is dead. So that's kind of what happened there. Sam, did that hurt your soul at all?
No, man, I've been on the Kevin Holland train ever since he fought Thiago Silva.
Well, that got a different narrative than I was expecting there, but okay.
Sam's on the show forever now. Sam's my favorite. Sam's easily my, I mean, Kevin Holland's good. Jacare's old. Shit happens.
That's
right?
essentially what we're looking at. Both there and Junior Dos Santos. And while we're still on that page, that was a fun 1-2 punch for a lot of people's childhoods. But Junior Dos Santos, Gaines hit. What make you of that being a illegal or legal hit, in your opinion, Sam?
I think like the first two were legal, and then maybe like the last one wasn't legal, but at that point it was already done. And going into it, like once you saw him pressed up against the fence, didn't you already feel like sickness in your stomach? Like, oh no, here it comes, so it was like inevitable anyway. Arguing like if it was legal or not, he would have just finished them with legal strikes at that point,
What a great concept to say, though, Sam. Hearing it you phrased exactly like that from you makes me laugh, because you're saying, like, well, I mean, he was going to finish him with legal strikes to begin with. I'll be like, can they all be legal strikes, please? I have a preference. And the reason why, Kevin, is because afterwards, Junior Dos Santos was looking back at him and saying, like, I mean, dude, he hit me, and that was an illegal hit. And really, what made me nervous was the moment I saw that jab connect with him and his face started contorting a little bit. And I thought, well, this is about to be as sad as I thought. And then it got sadder. So surprise to me. There is that. Cub Swanson, we mentioned, amazing. Fiziev, great fucking knockout. That was so much fun to watch. Again, rule of the show, always go for the Rafael. We try to tell people this. It's just science. Gavin Tucker, very dominant over Billy Q. And Tasha Torres looked back in form over an opponent who, all things considered, did step up. But there was a doctor stoppage after the first round.
Wait, what was the notice? How long did Sam Hughes have for this fight?
Well, essentially from, I think, the moment you texted me. Yeah. So.
Wow.
Yeah, not a amazing amount of time. And I do believe there was a couple days where it said TBA. So it might have even taken longer than we had presumed. And that's usually the UFC matchmakers calling to every gym and going, you got a chick? What's her weight? Is she okay? Yeah, that'll do. So anyway, Kev, you have some results that you are sitting on right now. I think the time has come for you to reveal them.
This is a massive bummer because, first of all, if Souza had won, I'm right in the hunt with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fights correct. But because I did not hit the parlay, I lose a point, which takes me down to 4 picks correct.
It's very reminiscent of Davis and Figueroa. So
I had Torres. Mr. Sam had Torres. I had Grant. He had Ying Liang. They didn't fight. We both had Fiziev. I had Souza. He was notably on the Kevin Holland train. I had Mackenzie Dern because of jiu-jitsu. He had John Jaroba. I had Chase Hooper because, child prodigies. Love him.
Right.
He had Peter Barrett because I guess he thought it was an accountant. I had Pineda.
Dubs, real quick on that one. Peter Barrett is also a friend of the show, Extended, and I didn't really remember that until a little bit later. Austin Stack is friends with him, messages me and goes, my boy Slippery Pete, he's fighting tonight. I was like, ooh, he's fighting a fan of the show, so I really can't go for your guy. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Cub Swan Song, somehow zombies over Pineda. We both had gain. This was the fight I was screaming about for no reason, and everyone was confused in the household. Quarantillo versus Tucker. Tucker pulled out a bullshit Canadian decision. Oliveira noticeably beat up Turd Ferguson. Sorry about his arm. We both had Spivak. They didn't fight. And then I had Lugiambula, and you had Carl Robertson, and they didn't fight. Then we both had Figs. And, Newton said for every action there's an equal and opposite reaction. Or there's a draw, you smug scientific a-hole. And that's what I would argue happened. He wins 6-4. It's brutal.
Your response, Sam?
I know things, so And then when I heard his picks during the thing, I was like, no, I got this.
6-4. And it was 6-5, but I did that stupid parlay. I'm glad I did though, because if it had hit, we're looking at a 2-point swing, I believe.
Well, Kev, what you
Actually,
don't know,
might
and I
be
didn't.
at 7. So
Kev, what I didn't tell you was I got a note from Sam. This is time stamped at 8:02 p.m. And he said, "Call me Supernatural Sam." So he was feeling pretty good about his results yesterday.
cool. He should. He did a fantastic job at picking fights.
Well, Sam,
I do have.
I was going to
part
make
of
the
bet
transition
prepared,
here.
but go ahead.
What is that, Kevin?
Well, obviously I owe him a shirt, but I also owe him a speech about mankind, and I've prepared some remarks. But go ahead. What were you about to say?
I was just going to say we will love to see those. Sam, do you have any parting wisdom or any kind of things that you would suggest to Kevin that maybe he can rebound in the next installment of Over Under Kevin, which will be a big one because it's going to be Dustin Poirier versus Conor McGregor?
He actually has a pretty good system by just looking at the names and deciding who's going to win. But I think if he adds to that another level of science where he looks at the number of letters in each name and then uses a little bit of mathematics, then he could figure out.
Wow.
That might add an element to his picking where it might become even more scientific,
Kev, I'm really into that idea.
I normally don't listen to these suggestions, but it's my favorite guest, so I have no choice. I'm writing it down. Took note.
Well, Sam, we need to get you on out of here, but we should give a final plug. Where can people listen to you?
Right
Where can they
before
find
that,
your stuff?
Okay, here's what I have. We're in the pitch
Okay.
room, right? I was a communications consultant I'm the chief of staff. It's you two and Mick Foley, right? I'm trying to get him. I'm convincing him it's his time. Cool. Here's the elevator pitch. He fought The Undertaker already. Hell in a Cell. It's a famous match. And we all know 4 years from now, Biden's going to be dead. So this is going to be an election against his Undertaker. And you have the knowledge. Let's talk about some of your alter egos. Cactus Jack. Did you hear that, Arizona and Nevada? What about Mankind? Hippies in California. The future is Republican. We have the sock puppet man himself. And frankly, I think your Wikipedia page is wrong when it calls you delusional and frequently accused of what would be borderline assault. That's the future of the Republican Party. So that's my quick elevator pitch.
Would note, I believe Mankind is a registered Democrat.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Oh.
Just from his
But,
tweet.
None of that matters, guys. Mankind. You're going to sweep California? Dude love. Florida's back in Democrat. I'll just switch it. Don't worry. Who's paying the check?
Yo, Kev, I didn't think about this till right now, but can he do every debate as a different character so that Mankind shows up one, Dude Love shows up as one?
Not only can he feels compelled to do so. Good luck tracking that one, Georgia. They're all going to vote Foley before they know what happened. I wasn't into this idea, Sam, when it was challenged. I'm now into it. So that's how I spent my Sunday, talking myself into that.
I appreciate how you've put so much more effort into that joke and monologue than researching the fights.
You're welcome.
And if you laugh now, just wait until you see how little work he does on the editing. So joke's on you, Sam. We're going to walk away from this bitch and it'll be up in probably 20 minutes afterwards. But I guess what I would like to say to you is this.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I was just going to compliment Kevin. This is a true testament to the preparation that he and I do. When he said he had prepared remarks, I wasn't sure that was going to go today. I thought that we were just going to cut to you being like, well, tell us where people can find you. And Kevin had it ready to go. So to me, I think we can say that you inspired us to maybe bring a little bit more preparation to our show. Now, granted, we're going to discard that after.
Hey, Verbal Tap fans. Sorry we had a little audio interruption, but it was, I think, just Raph speaking. Gonna throw it back to us as we get to Sam departing.
Find Southpaw on all the social media under Southpaw Pod. What we got coming up, we don't have any interviews coming out for a little bit, and in the interim, it'll be just like MMA stuff. And I might be also releasing some interviews I've done for other publications, so stuff like that.
That's great to hear. Kevin, I do want to tell you one thing real quick, which is we have to improve his hashtag game on YouTube, because I put Southpaw Pod, and the first result is POD's Southtown. Yes, the late 90s, early aughts POD, which was the Christian kind of rock new metal band. So that is one of the first results you get there. So Sam, we need to make sure we separate you from the POD there.
You know, when you watched that, did it take you down memory lane though? Did it do something for you?
I don't know, man. The early 2000s with the new metal and Limp Bizkit
And Tito Ortiz.
I'm just glad that there is no social media evidence, I guess to say, of what I may or may not have looked like, because it wouldn't be too different than you think, but it's also still embarrassingly enough to the point where I say, oh God, we did live through those times. But very well incorporated to the world of pro wrestling, I must say. So we'll say that. Well, Sam, listen, you're a blast,
leaving a
man.
5-star review right now on Southpaw Podcast.
Thank you.
Superb work, Kevin. And I just want to say this, Sam, again, I know that you saw a conversation we had with Dan Tom, but he was happy that we got together. And I did mean this when I say, you know, I've got a list of people that I always look out for, or I always kind of keep an eye on and say, when the time is right, I think it is time for us to combine forces. And I thought this was one of those times where I said, you know, let's make it happen. And I'm so glad that you are part of the VerbalTap family now. We're glad that you're a guest. We will find, I'm sure, other opportunities down the way to bring you back on the show. But we couldn't be happier that you were able to take time out, especially, I know, when you're going to race off to a vacation right now. But we appreciate your time. We appreciate the work that you do. And despite what they say, from whatever crazy internet trolls, you are doing phenomenal work, sir.
Oh, I really appreciate that. That means a lot. And this was a lot of fun. I am glad I have family status with you guys now. So, you know, I could put that somewhere.
Well, yeah,
in a biography,
you
in a
can.
description somewhere.
I'm sure you can. I don't know what that will do for you. Also, I have several PR statements in case you go too far left of us that I will be prepared to release that say, we never really knew Sam. No, it doesn't ring a bell. But obviously, we joke, we kid, but you're doing great work, man, and keep it up, dude.
All right. Thank you.
The number you have dialed has been changed. The new number is, please note, the new number is